Auburn getting a 42-14 win over Louisiana-Monroe, but not quite the start that Gus Malzahn had hoped for, coming off a big win over Georgia last week. Overall, James Crepea joins me now, and I just want to know, overall, what were the biggest issues that you saw from this football team, especially on the offensive side of the football?
Well, that was where the issues were, Lauren, was on the offensive side, particularly in the first half. It was a lethargic team. And now, could you chalk it up at any other week to, hey, it's an 11 a.m. kick, it's against a obviously overmatched Sun Belt team? Yeah, you probably could, and certainly in the second half, a 28-7 second half, where if it weren't for probably one busted play against a second or third team defense, Auburn would have shut out ULM in the second half defensively. The defense did great. They had 3 second half turnovers. All those things were good, but offensively they started off very, very slow. Even for all the yards that they had, a turnover was part of it. And the other part was, just like I said, it was a little bit of a lethargic team, but the second half, Cam Martin sparked the offense. Kerryon Johnson got them there mainly in the first half and the early part of the third quarter, but Cam Martin really provided the spark, and the defense did the rest.
All right, James, and it looked like some of the guys limping off the field. Week 12 of the football season, we see this happen all too often. Injuries, always a concern. Overall, what do we know about the health of this team coming out of this football game as we get ready for the Iron Bowl?
Well, for the injuries that happened on Saturday, the ones to pay attention to, for starters, it has to start with Trey Williams. He seemed to be the one that was most severe of the group. Not to say any of them are going to ultimately cost any of the Auburn's players the Iron Bowl, but he was one who appears to be a shoulder injury, was what a spokesman had said. He did not re-enter the game. He did not come back. I'm not even sure I saw him on the sideline after he left the game. That's obviously troublesome, because that's a starting linebacker, that's a senior, a major leader on this team, and a player who dealt with a shoulder injury earlier in the season and cost him a couple of games already. So if he was to aggravate that shoulder injury again, that would be just brutal for Trey Williams and a major part of the defense. Now, can Auburn get by without Trey? Yeah, they've shown that they can do it, but it would obviously be less than optimal to have to go into the Iron Bowl without him. That's one to pay attention to. But Malzahn was confident that the other injuries that took place were not as severe. We saw Jeff Holland go out early with what appeared to be an upper right leg injury, probably muscular in nature. He came back into the game. He also left and went to the locker room early. May have been precautionary. Nick Coe left the game, came back in. Tucker Brown, a blocking tight end, left the game at one point. I'm not sure if he got back in there. Chandler Wooten we saw leave to go to the locker room. So there was a lot of guys, not to mention Mike Horton and Darius James, who are dealing with injuries on the offensive line. So as a whole, it sounds like a lot of people, but at the same time, a couple of guys were held out for precautionary reasons today. A couple others just sound minor, but Trey Williams is definitely one to pay attention to the most leading into the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, it's always a good time to be more err on the side of caution, especially in a game like this, but certainly trying to get ready for that Iron Bowl. Now, my last question for you, James, there are some coaching rumors swirling around about Gus Malzahn potentially leaving Auburn, and that was addressed after the press conference this evening. What was Gus Malzahn's response to that question?
Well, the question was this: how do you handle when your name comes up with the coaching carousel? Nothing specifically in the line of questioning, and it was basically, do you ignore when that comes up? And that's exactly what Malzahn said he does. Yes, he does ignore it. And that one week you're being fired, the next week you're leaving for a better job, and he's just focused on winning the SEC West next week, so yes, he ignores it. Now, that is not going to put an end to any of this. I mean, ultimately, Arkansas laid off and fired its athletic director, Jeff Long, earlier this week. The widely held assumption by most everyone is that Brett Bielema will be fired sometime next week after the end of the regular season. We all know, Malzahn's history in the state of Arkansas. He was a storied high school coach there. He was the offensive coordinator there in 2006. His family is still there. It still means a lot to him, and it's a job that he covets, and it's a job that he holds in high regard. That said, would he really leave Auburn, even if it meant a longer contract and even a little bit of a pay bump? Would he really leave Auburn, potentially having just won the SEC West or won the SEC Championship and getting into the playoff? Kind of hard to believe. But it will not rest. It will not stop here. Ultimately, we still have to see what Arkansas is going to do. We still have to see what Auburn is going to do by way of a season. And with an athletic director set to leave, we have to see what Auburn, either athletic director Jay Jacobs or his successor, chooses to do with Malzahn by way of a contract extension, potentially.
Absolutely. Still so many moving parts. And, of course, the focus turning to the Iron Bowl this upcoming Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, for all your news and analysis on the Iron Bowl, you can visit us on AL.com.